Oh, 24 minutes. The timekeeper. The break was too long. Okay, let me begin this part then by talking to you a little bit rather than with you. And then after I talk to you a little bit, we will talk with each other again. All right? And some good conversations during the break as well. I'm not here. I conceptualize research as this broad spectrum of topics, and I break it into about four categories. Four categories. As a matter of fact, I designed the workshop that's going on at CMEO right now along those four categories. And for that workshop, we use Moodle, and in each of the categories, we put lots of documents so that the students and so on can have them available, download them. And I think she's sharing some of those with people who can too. I'm not as protective of my material. I never have been. There are some faculty who are very protective of their material. If they design a class, they think the class is theirs, and they shouldn't share it. But I've always been into sharing, especially when I'm working in Vietnam. I try to share as much as possible. I spend a lot of time collecting good documents, but they're all in English. Most of them are in English, and I share them. But anyway, let me tell you about these four areas of research, and maybe they'll make sense to you. The first part of research I look at is the question, the problem, coming up with a problem, coming up with a question, coming up with the funding, all the front end stuff, you know. And as part of that front end stuff, as we explore the development of the question and the issues, we do the literature review so that we're sure we're not reinventing the wheel, and that we get all of the recent literature. Anytime you want to do research and explore a topic, you should feel comfortable that you have identified at least the most recent good literature having to do with that topic. And believe me, there is. Any topic you can tell me. In probably 10 minutes, I can come back to you with some literature having to do with that topic. Now, these days, your lives are better. When I first started working in Vietnam in 1991, there was no electronic access. The libraries were pitiful. There was nothing. There were no resources to help people. But in the years that I've been working here, those resources have evolved. Access to the internet has expanded enormously. Many universities now have electronic versions of some of the big databases, the literature databases. It's not totally solved. Not like me. I can sit at my house in Saigon, and I can log on to my library in Fullerton, and I can get anything in the library. Anything. If it's not available electronically, they will scan it for me and send it to me. All I have to do is request it. You see, that's the kind of support that we give our faculty. And eventually, of course, that's kind of the watermark. Can Tzu University wants to aim for providing its faculty with as much support in that area as it possibly can. The same is true with the grant things. And I made a mental note to ask our grant people back home whether or not there is any free access of grant database. And if there is, I will send an email to Ms. Homan. She will let you know what it is. But there probably these days may be some free databases about grant opportunities. Now, the problem with American grants, of course, is you generally need to be an American or you need to be partnered with American. But there are lots of resources available for people who partner with Americans, and that's going to be strong. So the first part of these four areas that I see then is all that initial stuff. Very, very important, because your ability to ask the question correctly determines how successful your research is going to be. Many of the problems that I see, people doing research either here or abroad, is that they are unclear themselves about which question they are asking, which question they are trying to answer. And when you don't have a clear vision, a clear articulation of what the problem issue is and what the questions are that you want to answer, then generally the rest of what you do is confused, cloudy, covered, and the results are dubious, to say the least. So that first part is much more important than you could possibly imagine. And of course it involves, how do I even find those ideas? But then once you find those ideas, how do you put those ideas into words, into substance, So, and in your case, you deal in Vietnamese, and once again, I suggest strongly that you have a group of friends, colleagues, who look at the stuff you write, let them be critical, not negative critical, positive critical, you see? Vietnamese have a hard time distinguishing between criticism, which is meant to be negative, and criticism, which is meant to be positive. You need to learn positive criticism. Everything I do, I share. My friends at CMEO, we're doing a big baseline assessment for the CMEO College, where we have participants from the 11 nations coming. We wanted to collect some data. I did a draft, sent it out to the team. 4 or 5 of them made very critical remarks about the content, about the way it was worded. I took those critical remarks, and now that baseline survey is really, really good because of their input. And the same is true with you. When you do things, share it with other people and have them tell you what they think. It doesn't mean you have to change it, but at least hear what other people think. And very often, other people can find errors, typos, and problems that you can't see because we get tired. We write, I think I've got this email perfect. I send it out, 7 mistakes. That's just the way life is. So, but that front part, very, very important. Included in the front part, then, is measurement, because when you articulate your problem and your research question, you have to think about what are the propositions here. Do we have propositions? Is A influencing B? Or do we have hypotheses? As A increases, B also increases. Do we have those kind of things? And if we do have those kind of things, what are those concepts? What are those variables? What are the independent variables? What are the dependent variables? How do we measure them? What are we going to use to measure them? What's the best way to measure them? We have to think about all those things in that front end section of thinking about research. So that's the first part of the process. The second part I call design. And I'm ready to talk to you about design today as well. I thought maybe if we had some time and we wanted to do some things, it's nice to do activities, but with only one day and such a big crowd, it's hard to do activities, believe me, okay? So there's an interaction of pedagogy and the real constraints of the teaching assignment that you've been given. And this is one of those cases where it's very difficult since we only have one day together and such a large crowd. I cannot do activities as much as I like to do activities because activities generate better understanding. But your questions are like those activities. They were exceptional questions, and I think Dr. Fung heard them and the thing is to make them pay attention. So you'll have to keep on saying those. So the second part, the big part, is design, the overall design. And those designs can be anything from survey research, field research, experimental designs, quasi-experimental designs. Once again, depending on how well you've asked the question, that exercise will almost tell you which design might be the best design. You hear my language? The best design. For any given question, there are an infinite number of solutions for doing research. There is not just one design. There are hundreds of designs that you could choose, depending on how much time you have, depending on how much money you have, depending on all kinds of things. All right? So what we do as researchers is we pick the very best structure of research that we can, given all the constraints that are on us. Will the research be perfect? No. The research I did with the juvenile delinquents in Orange County, they gave me $250,000 every year to do the research. I could not make it perfect. Impossible. You can't do perfect research. I know people who are researching in cancer and medical research get $1 million every year. You cannot be perfect. You always make mistakes. Things always happen that interfere. So the best you can do is you can, under your circumstances, design a set of activities that you think are the best activities that you can accomplish. If you design activities that are too high, too much, too expensive, then you're going to fail. You've got to design activities that you can manage and you can do. So that's kind of the second part then of my big view of the research process. The third part, which is what you're getting next Thursday, huh? Do I have a slide on it? Oh. You don't want that slide? Boring.